You know, Studio Series Long Haul is cool and everything, despite him being expensive, but have you ever heard of a Studio Series Payload? What's going on, everybody? Republic Cinema here, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at this knockoff of the Transformers Studio Series Long Haul, this time around with yellow colors indicating that this is Payload. And I know what you're thinking. Yes, a Payload does exist. However, I would like to point out that he is not an official Hasbro product, but rather this is a knockoff by Ayoi Mech of a very elusive figure to get for a good price. Just a little backstory on how I got my copy during the time he was pretty hard to find due to him being quite expensive. Sometime in either January or February 2021, Big Bad Toy Store did get a hold of a few copies and sold them for like $49.99. Now I get $50 for a $30 Voyager class. Is pretty expensive, but that's somewhat a reasonable price since this guy at the time, and he still goes for like $100 or $150 depending on whether you got him with or without the packaging. I got him with the box, brand new, never opened. And I can't believe since then there has never been a reissue of this figure at all. But anyways, a few knockoff companies went their way to make an affordable version, which is not so bad of a quality, such as this guy. Now, Payload didn't get much screen time on Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, as I think he only had like one camera shot of the entire movie, unless you count the shots where he was part of Devastator's leg. But either way, it would have been great for Hasbro to make a Studio Series repaint of Long Haul, but they never did. So far, this is the only lead we have. The only affordable lead, actually. What I meant was that if Hasbro does in fact make a Payload repaint of Long Haul, he's going to run for $35. I got this for $15 less than that. You can find some pretty mind-blowing deals for knockoffs if you shop at AliExpress. I would like to point out that I never got him with the box, I just wanted to get him without the box. But in case you're wondering what the box art looks like, here you go. Now anyways, painting and sculpting on this figure is pretty good. The details are really nice. And of course with the painting over here, kind of makes this figure look like Hasbro worked on this. These knockoffs are out of control these days. It's even more impressive how they basically just copy and pasted the printing for the parts of this guy similar to the Studio Series Long Haul. I would like to point out that I do have some knockoffs that struggle with the copy and paste printing, but not this guy. And also I would like to talk about the head, as I think it looks really cool. I think when Hasbro designed this figure they did a really good job, and now to see it with yellow coloring just makes it look somewhat cooler. Now, to talk about the kibble, these parts right here and this part and these two wheels are pretty accurate. And I believe the wheels on the legs are also accurate too. But if you turn this figure around, he does have a backpack, which actually this part is removable. Thus, I suppose if you find this kibble unwanted, you can remove it and close this in. And there you have a less chunky Payload. I personally like to keep that tabbed in. Now, the quality on this figure or at least my copy, is not too loose, but I suppose tight. Like for example, the joints on the left arm aren't super tight for some reason, and when moving the shoulder down, it kind of leaves this section to untransform itself. The shoulders on my copy have trouble trying to tab it onto that little tab right there, let alone the wheels trying to tab it onto that slot over there. But other than that, I have no issue with this figure. And in case you're wondering where the die-cast metal parts are located on this knockoff, they're located on the toes. Now, one more mention of kibble I like to point out is that there is kibble on the bottom of the feet, but it's not like you're gonna see it whilst in robot mode. And hey, at least this kibble supports the feet as heel spurs, or I think they're just called heels. Now, unfortunately, much like the original Studio Series Long Haul, this Payload does not come with any accessories, but it's worth mentioning that this guy does have missile pods in the front of his arm kibble, as he did have missiles in the movie, and no other accessories, I believe, unless we're talking about Onslaught, but that's another story. Hasbro words that Studio Series Onslaught. But anyway, since there's no accessories, I think it's time we move on to Articulation, ball joint at the head, which is also supported by a hinge joint under that ball joint, which grants the head a double downward and double upward movement. And since the head is supported by a ball joint, the head could also swivel. There would have been a full rotation at the arm had it not been this big wheel blocking the way, so I'm just going to say that this arm has forward and backward movement. And a bend at the shoulder, bend at the elbow, elbow swivel, unfortunately no wrist swivel, but there is in fact a waist swivel supported by a ratchet joint. The legs can spread. You might want to move this guy out for some extended articulation. Same thing with these thigh pieces, which allows the leg to move forward completely and move backwards completely. Yeah, this articulation is a little complicated. Technically, this counts as thigh swivel, but then there's also knee swivel and a bend at the knee. The foot is on a pivot joint. This is more on the transformation department, but if you want, you can count the toes moving up and down as part of articulation. And I think that's pretty much it for articulation. Now moving on to size comparison. Starting off with the official Hasbro Studio Series Long Haul, Soundwave, Sideways, Scrap Metal, Hightower, Scrapper, Rampage, Skipjack, Mixmaster, Scavenger, Overload, Bone Crusher, Starscream, Grinder, Bayway Megatron, and lastly, here Payload is next to the Fallen. Now, one more thing I would like to showcase is Payload next to all of the other Decepticons that appeared in Revenge of the Fallen, or at least the ones that got figures anyways. The only other Decepticons I suppose we're missing are a few different variations of their protoforms and a concept art Buckethead and Demolisher. If there's anyone else I missed, be sure to let me know in the comments. Also, is it just me, or does the team of Decepticons from Revenge of the Fallen seem a little colorful? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this was the most amount of Decepticons with different color variations. And they say all the Decepticons were very dull in terms of color. No, they were not. But anyways, let me know in the comments which one is your favorite. But anyways, I think it's time we get down to transformation, which there's actually 2 other alt modes for this guy. But anyways, starting off, what you're going to do is move the arms upward. And it's recommended that before you move the arms upward, you move the head and rotate at 180. And now it's time we work on the legs. So starting off, what you're going to do is push the toes in, move the wheels backwards, and rotate this whole assembly. Once you have done the other side, you will go ahead and plug everything in, and then spin to the back. We're going to move this entire section out and have it tab onto those big tabs. As you can see, there's some big slots over there that will join, and there you have the front of Payload's truck mode. Now, these next steps are pretty hard. So I believe what you will do first is rotate this entire section, make sure that the back of the shoulder is facing frontwards, and then move this down a bit so you can allow for some room for the wheel to untab and move right there. On second thought, for the shoulder, you got to make sure that this is facing upwards, as it will allow you to move this whole arm a little bit more upwards than the other side of the shoulder hinge movement. After that, untab this entire section, rotate it like this, open this entire piece out and then close it in, and then rotate this down and close that. After that, you want to untab this entire assembly, move it down, and whilst you're moving that down, you're going to fold in the arm using the elbow movement, and then make sure that this part tabs into that slot right there, but also at the same time you make sure that these tabs tab in right there. Make sure you push this shoulder 100% inwards. You do the same thing for the other side, and then you're going to push this piece down and make sure that these 2 tabs connect onto those 2 slots. And then after that, move the back wheels downwards, to which they will tab in onto that tab right there. The same thing goes for the other wheel. And here you have Payload in his alt mode, which is pretty much Long Haul's alt mode, but yellow. Now, painting and sculpting on this truck mode, I mean, it's not the most accurate alt mode, as there is a little bit of robot mode kibble located right here, and also the arm kibble right here. But I guess where else are they supposed to go? I don't know if this is accurate, but the back wheels are a little thicker than the front wheels, and I think the designers may have been a little sneaky with the thigh right here. On the bright side of this alt mode, it's pretty hefty, but I do like the way the front looks better than any other part of this truck mode. But I understand that the designers did their best when making the alt mode, since this guy also has a combiner mode, which we'll get to. But anyways, for a brief comparison, here he is next to the Studio Series Long Haul in dump truck mode. And then here he is next to Skipjack, which is quite accurate to the film, although I think Payload was on the left and Skipjack was on the right. All I know is that I believe both of them transformed into the right leg of Devastator. Now, if there was only one way for them to do that. Now, if only there was one way to do that in figure form. But anyways, here Payload is alongside both Long Haul and Skipjack. And of course, they all look good together. I'm sure they'd look even better with the whole cast of Constructicons put together. I think I might do a community tab on that, actually. And now, it's time we transform this guy into his combiner mode, which is pretty straightforward. Starting off, I think you're supposed to untab these pieces, untab this piece, and extend this part right here. That did not have to happen. Same thing for the other side, I guess. After that, you untab this whole assembly, leave this down right here for now, open the thighs, and then push this whole section up. And then you move this section back up again, and then close in the arms. You bring the hand back to that tab, and then close this in. Whilst at the same time making sure that that is closed completely inwards as well. Same thing for the other side. And lastly, all you have to do is close this in, and I think it tabs into something. But then when moving the wheels down, they don't necessarily tab into anything, they just stay there. But anyways, here we have Payload in his combiner mode, which is the right leg for Devastator, and I suppose it's accurate. I mean, the flat foot is pretty accurate. The painting and sculpting, overall it doesn't look too bad. Unless you look at the robot mode cable right here. Oh, and since this part doesn't tab into anything, it does happen to move up and down. Speaking of moving up and down, the articulation is a side-to-side ankle pivot, and the foot can also move up and down. And that's pretty much it for the articulation of this big foot. And in case you're wondering, of course this guy is compatible with the Studio Series Overload. All you gotta do is just tab that big slot onto the big tabs right there, and there you go. There's Devastator with 2 yellow legs. But anyways, let me know in the comments which color of the left leg you like more. The yellow one or the green one. And I think that's pretty much it. I think that's all I have to say for this guy. Overall, a pretty great KO. And a pretty great repaint of that too. I most definitely recommend you pick this figure up, since he is significantly cheaper than that astronomical price of the Studio Series Long Haul. If you're looking to pick this figure up, there is a listing on AliExpress where you could pick this figure up via a pick-a-figure listing. And I believe there's no other listing for this figure on AliExpress at all. So if I were you, I'd probably jump on that deal and pick this figure up. There's also an option where you can get this guy in the box too. But anyways, do you think Hasbro should make an official Studio Series Payload? Despite this figure being a pretty cool knockoff, I still think Hasbro should make an official Payload repaint of Long Haul. While we're on the topic, actually, I believe Hasbro should make a Desert Brawl repaint of the original Brawl. The same scenario would imply for Scavenger and Demolisher. So yeah, there's quite a couple of cool repaints that would be great to see later on in the Studio Series. But anyways, if you like what you saw in this video, be sure to slam that like button, share this with your friends as well, turn on post notifications so that way you don't miss another video, and most importantly, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for watching. See ya!